Okay, there we go. Good morning. This is the first time I've ever had to move a microphone up. Welcome, everyone, to the BACWA annual meeting. I'm so excited to see everyone here. My name is Jackie Zipkin. I'm the general manager of the East Bay Dischargers Authority, and I have the privilege of being the BACWA chair. And I am so excited to see you all here, hear all the great conversations and networking that are happening. That's a big part of why we come together each year. I'm an extrovert who works for an agency that has a total of 3 staff, including me. And so I rely on this community for not only my water quality knowledge, but my sanity. So I am so excited to be with you all today. We're gonna have a really great day just talking about all of BACWA's accomplishments and what's in store for us in the future. So we'll be starting off hearing from our regulators. We have a really unique opportunity here in the Bay Area to work together with other wastewater managers and also to work in partnership with the regulatory agencies. And so as an example of that, we're going to hear from the lead staff at a number of our key regulatory agencies this morning. Then we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, nutrients. So you'll be hearing the latest that we've been working on in responding to the nutrient watershed permit that was adopted last year. Then we have a lot of networking time built in, so that is a great opportunity to meet other people, see folks that you haven't seen in a while, so take advantage of those half-hour breaks for coffee and 1-hour break for lunch. But also make sure you come back when we call you. Then this afternoon, we're going to talk about climate change. We're going to talk about pollution prevention. So we're really looking to the future and thinking about how we can best respond to the challenges that are facing us. And then we're going to wrap up with a happy hour across the street at Jupiter. And I mention that right now so that you can all text your partners, tell them they need to pick up the kids today because you've got a work thing. All right. So I know that what you're here for is somewhat the regulatory stuff, somewhat the water quality updates, but what you're really here for is the jokes. Because you've gotten used to Amit as the MC, and you know I can't do that justice. So I asked Amit to give me some jokes. So we're actually going to start by reviewing the last few months in time because it's been a while since we've been together. So we're going to start in January when the EPA dropped their PFAS, PFOA sewage sludge risk assessment. And in the process, we were introduced to the wholesome concept of a farm family. Don't ask where the farm family lives. It's a mystery like Bigfoot, but with overalls. Then in February, breaking news, Taylor Swift did not win the Super Bowl. I know, shocking. Apparently, they still give it to football teams. Who knew? In March, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with San Francisco in a case about permits. When does the Supreme Court ever care about what we do? Vague ones? Honestly, this one's a snoozer. Let's just all pretend it doesn't happen and move on with our lives. And then in April, since we last met face-to-face, a lot has happened. April 1st, April Fool's Day, is strategically the safest day to propose to someone. Think about it. If they say no, you can just say, ha, I was joking, totally joking. Please excuse me while I softly cry in the corner. But then we had Liberation Day, the tariff announcements, a whole lot of people working for the federal government losing their jobs. At first we thought, surely this is the most elaborate April Fool's Day prank in history, but unfortunately it was real. But don't worry, like a soap opera villain, some jobs came back from the dead. Meanwhile, the tariffs were on, off, paused. Basically, April was that friend that says they're 5 minutes away but haven't left their house yet. All right, so now we're in May, and we're ready to get into the meat of this. Thank you for indulging me in some corny humor. I may have poop jokes later. Mike Fox says he has a website for me, so stay tuned for that. And with that, we're going to get into the year in review. So in all seriousness, BACWA is incredibly lucky to have extremely competent, personable, and knowledgeable staff. We have Lorian Fono, our executive director, Mary Cousins, our regulatory program manager, and Jennifer Diamond, our assistant executive director, who are all incredibly good at their jobs and make all of us look good and make our jobs easier. So let's have a round of applause for the BACWA staff. And with that, I'm going to welcome Lorian up to give us a little bit of a year in review that's more serious than the one I just gave you.
Thanks, Jackie. And I got to say that the staff are lucky to have a great board to give us guidance and have vision about what we want to see out of the region. So this is actually the session that back when we used to do a member survey was the least popular session. And I don't have any jokes, but I did expunge the business reporting, so you don't have to sit through our annual expenses and revenues. But we included on the cover slide that will be showing up between presentations here and throughout a QR code. You can use your phone to go to our annual meeting webpage that has the agenda for this meeting, as well as a lot of the resources that we're going to be talking about during this meeting. And the QR code will go up a few times throughout this presentation, but it's the same QR code, so you don't have to keep flashing at it. And I guess it works better if you turn it on. But actually, no, it doesn't. Okay. Wow, there's literally nothing I can do. Oh, okay. Yay. Okay, well, this is a year in review, and of course, the most impactful thing that happened during this last year was the adoption of the watershed permit. And we're going to have an entire session that is going to be after the break to discuss the permit and how agencies are making decisions about which nutrient reduction projects to pursue. So since last year's meeting, we've collaborated with some of our partners in producing a couple of large events. So back in August, we hosted many of you at a nutrient reduction seminar, which supported the David Jenkins Scholarship Endowment. This event featured an operations-focused review of nitrogen reduction and process intensification alternatives, and the material from this and all of our events are posted on our website. So on Tuesday of this week, and I saw a lot of you there, the BACWA Recycled Water Committee partnered with NorCal Water Reuse to host a workshop that examined the nexus between recycled water and nutrient reduction. And based on the large turnout at these events, it appears there's a large appetite for nutrient-related content and information opportunities, so we're going to be continuing to plan those throughout this next coming year. So this last year, we've been continuing to build a value of wastewater campaign to educate the public about who we are and what we do. This messaging complements the pollution prevention outreach that we've hosted for many years on baywise.org. So we have completed a refresh of baywise.org with a new look and materials related to wastewater or clean water fundamentals that we're going to continue to enhance. We also have developed unbranded content that your agencies can use to put out that messaging yourselves. And the sign that's on this page is posted at 68 locations around the Bay. It includes our logo and wastewater messaging and other environmental initiatives. So these are just examples of some of the work that we've been doing. So in terms of membership services, and in the spirit of continuous improvement, we continue to enhance these. You can find these activities described in our annual report, which is on the annual meeting page, which is accessible through that QR code. So we continue to have 9 committees, many of which do meet in a hybrid format and are open to all BACWA members. We continue to publish monthly BACWA bulletins, and they highlight key issues and activities and opportunities for member participation. If you're not on the bulletin list, you can sign up by entering your contact information at the bottom of our website, BACWA.org. If your agency has news you'd like highlighted in our bulletin, please reach out. We have a member news section that we're always looking for content for. So we assist our members in NPDES compliance reporting, both for the annual SMR as well as pollution prevention reporting. BAPPG puts out an annual report that your agency can use to reference to meet your pollution prevention requirements. And opportunities for discussion of key issues happen throughout our various activities. We host a managers roundtable 3 or 4 times every year. So we've had a lot of leadership turnover in our member agencies recently, but this is an opportunity for directors and GMs to get together to talk about their common issues. Support for fundraising. If your agency is looking to attract grant funding and would like to show the regional benefit of your project, BACWA is always happy to write a letter of support for your project. And we also continue to support 3 projects of special benefit on biosolids, our chemical consortium that Jennifer, who handed you your tag outside, she wears many hats, but one of them is chemical consortium administrator, as well as the Bay Area Biosolids Coalition, which we're going to be talking about more later. We continue to produce the regulatory issues matrix, and it was just updated yesterday and posted on our website. This is a really great primer on the many issues that our agencies are juggling, and wanted to thank Mary for keeping it updated and filled with great information. And on behalf of our members, BACWA has a list of representatives who engage in a wide variety of collaborative efforts nationally, statewide, and regionally. In terms of scientific investigations, BACWA representatives are part of the board of directors of the Aquatic Science Center and SFEI, as well as on many RMP working groups and technical review and steering committees. And you'll notice that we don't actually have any science on our program today, but please pick up one of these at the check-in desk. It's a summary of the science that we've all been contributing to for the last decade, and it's really well produced, and I wanted to thank SFEI for making this available for us. So we engage in mercury and PCB risk reduction, which is a requirement of our mercury PCB watershed permit. We're going to be looking for opportunities to fund projects that are equity adjacent that have recently lost federal funding to comply with this permit. And then along with EBDA, we contribute every year to the Bruce Wolfe Memorial Scholarship for students from the San Francisco Bay region. So what's coming up in the next year? As I mentioned, we're going to continue to prioritize watershed permit compliance and our other core functions, and we've heard feedback from BACWA's members via the registration survey that we put out that there's interest in nutrients, of course, PFAS, workforce development. We're going to continue to raise the profile of wastewater and support our members on regional communications. And then from an operational standpoint, we have a couple of new items. And changes that are coming. So first of all, BACWA is going to have a new class of membership that is for POTWs from outside of our region. So we wanted to welcome Sac Sewer as a new member. I think there's some folks here from Santa Rosa. And if you have colleagues who are BACWA adjacent from outside of the jurisdictional boundaries of Region 2, but would be interested in participating in our committees, now that is open to folks, and hopefully we can enhance our collaboration and the participation in our meetings by having these extra folks. And then we are going to be bringing in the Bay Area Biosolids Coalition, which has been a project of special benefit as a BACWA committee that is going to be open to everybody. And we're going to be hearing about that after lunch. So with that, I'd like to invite you to reach out to BACWA if you have any questions about our programs or the topics that you hear today. I'm always available to chat. If you have regulatory questions, you can reach out to our regulatory program manager, Mary Cousins. Jennifer Diamond, who checked you in outside, can help you with administrative or invoicing questions, and BACC as well. We work hard to keep our website, BACWA.org, up to date so that it can be a useful resource for our members. So with that, I'd like to introduce BACWA board member Laurie Schechtel, who's the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Division Manager from Central San. She'll be monitoring our section on regulator priorities, and I would like to invite our regulators to come up as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorian. It's really good to see everyone here this morning. We're very fortunate to be able to host the leadership from our air and water regulators every year. It gives us an opportunity to hear directly from them in terms of what their agency's current thinking is. It's always a very popular session and often the reason that many of you choose to attend today's meeting. So no pressure at all on our presenters. So our first speaker today will be Dr. Meredith Bauer, the Deputy Executive Officer of Engineering and Compliance at the Bay Area Air District. Following Meredith, we'll hear from Peter Kozelka, EPA Region 9's MPDS Permitting Manager. Our next two speakers will be Phil Crater, Chief Deputy Director at the State Water Resources Board, and then Bill Johnson, MPDS Chief at the San Francisco Bay Board. So each speaker will be given we'll give their presentation, and then when all four have finished, we have two questions that we're going to be posing to the group, and then if time allows, we'll have Q&A from the audience as well. So first we'll hear from Dr. Meredith Bauer, who serves as Deputy Executive Officer of Engineering and Compliance and oversees a lot of things at the Air District, engineering, permitting, and compliance and enforcement divisions, as well as the Health Risk Assessment Risk Reduction Program. Dr. Bauer earned her doctoral degree in atmospheric science from UC Berkeley and earned her bachelor's in natural resources from Cornell University. She worked at US EPA for over 20 years and has extensive experience managing various air quality programs. Prior to her current role, she served as Assistant Director at EPA Region 9, overseeing permitting and rules. So the platform is all yours, Meredith.
Okay, is this working?
The mic's
Yeah?
working, but the clicker's not working.
Okay. Oh, so I should go up here then. Okay. Good. And this is okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. First of all, that's not my coffee cup. I did follow the rule and not bring any beverages in. So. Okay, second thing, I'm notoriously bad at telling jokes, but I do have one that's relevant, so I'm going to give it a try. So, okay, why do seagulls fly over the sea? Because if they flew over the bay, they would be bagels. Okay, it felt like a relevant one, so okay, thank you. Okay, let's see, get into the content. Let's try that. Down arrow, yes?
I found if I just kept pushing buttons eventually.
Should we get rid of the keyboard setup assistant?
We need Lorian, our tech help here, because I am not a Mac
While
person.
we're doing that, I think you can hear me.
There's a.
Do you want to come up and I can just start talking a little bit? I'm just going to go over the agenda for a minute. Okay, so when the agenda comes up, what'll be on it is I want to talk about our strategic plan, focusing on our permit strategies, since many of you will need to navigate the air permit system in order to do your big projects. Then some information, so that'll be a lot of it. Then some on staffing updates because we need the staff to get you your permits. And then I want to talk a little bit about ways that we are trying to make the air permit process more transparent so you know what's going on with your permits. And then I'll finish up with some of our upcoming priorities.
Okay, clicker works now.
Okay, so should we use the clicker or this is fine? This one, okay, great. Let me just, good, okay. Okay, great, here we are. So we just went through the agenda. Okay, so I joined the Air District about 1.5 years ago. When I came on, we started working on a 5-year strategic plan. It got adopted in the fall, and so I want to kind of cover some of what's in that strategic plan. We've got there's a lot here about our mission, our values, the vision. That's great, but I want to just bring your attention to the goals. Goal 1 is to achieve impact. Goal 2 is to advance environmental justice. Goal 3 is to foster cohesion and inclusion. And goal 4 is the one, be effective, accountable, and customer-oriented. So I'm going to focus mostly on that last one. Let's see, and I'm going to get my glasses. Welcome to your 50s. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so as I said, goal 4, be effective, accountable, and customer-oriented. At the bottom is a sample commitment. I'm going to dive into this. You know, this is really about you getting the service you need from us so that your projects continue. We are all, you know, trying to get public works moving forward, whether you work on water or, you know, I look at it from air. You know, I drink the water. I live in the Bay Area. I want you all to get the projects done that you need to get done. So our permit strategies, so there are 3 of them. I'm sure the black box there, does that feel familiar to some of you? Yeah, okay, I get it. Strategy 4.1 is timely permits, improve the timeliness of our permitting decisions. Strategy 2 is to have a transparent permit process. We want to improve the permit process to be more transparent and accountable to the applicants, also to the public, so they know what's going on when they give us some comments. And then consistent permits. We want to make sure that our rules and our air quality permits are clear, consistent, and enforceable. Okay, and generally, right, this black box, this is what feels like permitting to you all. It feels like it to me. When I first started, I was like, can somebody explain this? And the answer's not really all the time, right? So I'm starting to unpack it. We're going to put it back together in a more, in the nice box that looks like more like a well-oiled machine where things churn through. It's understandable, it's predictable, it's enforceable, right? That's what we're going for. Okay, so I'm going to talk about each one of our permit strategies. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll just draw your attention to some of our commitments. So the structure of our strategic plan, if you were to look at it, is, as I said, you know, we have goals, 4 goals. We're now on goal 4, strategy 4.1, timely permits. There are commitments that are specific to each one of these strategies, and then we're developing action plans based on the commitments. So I want to highlight commitment 2 here, which is to better track permit applications, address bottlenecks in the permit process, and improve our internal coordination. And then commitment 3, establish permit project teams for complex permits, which I think many of you with your big projects have what I would consider complex permits and complex facilities. For transparent permitting, we want the process to be more clear, and we want accountability on all sides. All 3 of these commitments are highly relevant, I think, for many of you. We want to provide more information to you all and the public throughout the permit process. We want to create user-friendly reports and make the information more publicly accessible. We want you to be able to track them. We want the sources, the permit activity, and the emissions all to be much more obvious to people. And then commitment 3 is about communication, and this is to you all, but also our public. Make it less jargony and less complicated for people to understand. And then lastly, consistent permits. I'll just note commitment 2, which is about standard permit conditions and taking our regulations and make them into more clear, like here's the rule, it should have a fairly standard way that it gets implemented in a permit. So we're going for that too. Okay, so that's kind of the details of what's in our permitting strategic strategies in the strategic plan. So this part, the next few slides are about kind of like rubber hits the road, kind of, we went from the vision, here's what the strategies are. What are some of the things we're actually doing to make these things happen? We have a whole big action plan on this, but I want to highlight a few things that I think you will understand as being important to get your permits. In last fiscal year, we did get 5 new permit engineer positions approved. 4 of them are at the senior level, recognizing that it's many of our complex permits that are stuck. One of them is in our organics and wastewater section, so that hire just occurred about a month ago, so we're bringing on a new person to help from a staffing perspective. This is not just about bodies in the door problem, though, but one of the challenges is staffing, but there's a whole efficiency thing that we're working on as well, which I'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, for this coming fiscal year, we have asked the board to approve in the budget, which hasn't happened yet, but we've asked for 3 positions. One is this BACT and consistency coordinator, so the best available control technology is a moving target. That's not something we decided, but it is the way it is. But nonetheless, we're trying to bring some consistency and predictability to that so you can plan your projects, get your equipment, and not feel like here you are about to start building or doing something, or you need your permit, and oops, now that engine's not going to work anymore, right? So we're trying to have that centralized, have a real cadence for when BACT gets updated so that you kind of understand what you need to be looking for in terms of technology. And then we've also got this facility-funded engineering program manager, which is a brand new concept for the Air District. And this would be someone who does a lot of the project management type work and coordination and communication with our facilities when things get stuck and to help keep them moving. We have a flyer that's sitting out in the entryway, so please go look for that if you're interested in learning more about that. This is sort of the overview of that, some benefits, what they would do. I don't want to take the time and go into this now, but this information is in that flyer out front. So at the break, please feel free to go take a look at that if that's of interest. Okay, and in terms of some other mechanics and things we're working on, this is a screenshot of the dashboard that you could see if you go to My Air Online and look for your air permit. So we are making changes. I don't think this is what you see today, but this is what's coming, which is we want to now have the application status more prominently displayed. So it's complete or it's incomplete for fees or something like that. So that's that box there. Where we're really going, though, is a visual timeline. Where is your permit? How long has it been there? And create the different steps. We're going to build out more statuses than this, but this is sort of the beginning of what this is going to look like. So you can see the steps that you have gone through, the steps that are still remaining. We're going to build in timeframes for these as well of how long it's been there. One of the most important things, though, I think we're adding is this time with the Air District and the applicant. And what I see happen again and again is that a permit engineer at the Air District has requested something from an applicant, and our engineer thinks that they've been very clear with the request, and the applicant doesn't either understand the request or doesn't realize that everything is stopped until we get that piece of information. And so this with applicant. Now we've created a button where an engineer can click, this is now with applicant, here's what's been requested. And what's going to happen is an automatic email will get generated and get sent to the applicant, and this will be in the file. Pardon the weird font here. This is a work in progress. So when this, and then there will be update, like notifications. This will go out first, then every, 2 weeks or 30 days, you'll get a reminder, hey, we're waiting on X. And that way, you all know what we're needing. We know when you need something from, from a coordination standpoint, we think this will really help. Okay, so almost done here. We've got our upcoming priorities, we're permit streamlining and backlog reduction. Now that we've got kind of some of our system more in order to do tracking and reporting, we want to do a whole bunch of analytics on where really are the bottlenecks, and let's clear those out. We're going to do a permit streamlining policy, so we'll welcome input as we get closer down the line on that. We want to do more online permitting. If you can enter your information, then you know it's in there. It can, we'll have checkers of like, did you put in everything that we will need? So that'll prevent the problems on our side of like, oh, it's not complete. Or we don't have all the information. It sits, right? So we don't want that to happen. You also have control about what the information that's in there looks like. And then making the information more publicly available. One thing that my colleague, Deputy Executive Officer Greg Nudd, who was here last year, he mentioned is that he's in charge of this strategy, change approach to air quality. This is a lot about, instead of having regional air quality lens and make improvements at the more regional level, to really bring a community focus. And there's a big emphasis on overburdened communities. A lot of your projects are in overburdened communities. And that means every increment of increase in air emissions triggers a lot of different steps in your permit application and in our review. So when you're scoping a project, to the extent that you can work with, with internally, with the consultants, whoever you work with, to really understand what the air emissions are at the front end, and where you put the stack matters, where you put the backup generator matters when you're working in an overburdened community. So I just really want to flag that for your upcoming, I know you've got some big projects coming, and if you could think about the air emissions part and get really specific and real about that on the front end, it'll really help the permit side of things. And that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Now we'll hear from Peter Kazelka, who serves as the manager of the NPDES permit section in the Water Division at EPA Region 9. He has more than 25 years' experience with various Clean Water Act programs, including water quality standards and monitoring, 303D lists, and TMDLs, and NPDES permits. He also has worked with colleagues at both the state and regional water boards to promote stormwater capture and water reuse to address drought and water resiliency.
Morning, folks. Happy to be back again. This is the third year in a row. I don't have a joke, but I do have an anecdote that sort of describes my mental state these days. I was at the 19th Street BART when I realized I was supposed to be in downtown Berkeley. So every day we wake up to something new and different, but I'm glad to be here. I hope to be here next year and the year after, or somebody from EPA. So I have a few updates. Some of this will be kind of very high level. Some of this will be a little more closer to what you're interested in hearing. If you ask questions and they're pointed and I'm not answering them, that's the way life is. So prepare you for what I've got. As you know, we have a new administration, and this administration has outlined some initiatives. In this case, they're called the 5 pillars. They're specific to EPA, so I will read them to you. I think you'll recognize some of them, and some you'll... Anyway. First pillar is clean air, land, and water for every American. Second pillar is restore American energy dominance. The third is permitting reform, cooperative federalism, and cross-agency partnership. And the fourth, make America the AI capital of the world. And last but not least, protecting and bringing back American automobile jobs. So those are pretty high level. I might have some more information, I might not, but I'll wait for your questions on that one. If you haven't read them, I felt like it was obligated to share them with you, and some of them I think really do resonate, and some of them I'm uncertain how to respond. Okay, budget and funding. Everybody's always interested in money. EPA, I think I said this last year, we give out, I should say, our budget is, let me take that back. Our budget is about $7 billion. Has been pretty steady on that. Oddly, over half of that is related to grants. And very unique to EPA Region 9, $1 billion comes out of EPA Region 9 Water Division. So you're talking lots of grants, lots of money, lots of good resources. It will continue through September 30th, 2025. That's the budget we had. It came in 2 phases. We got 2 continuing resolutions, which might not mean anything to you, but mean something to us. As to 2026, anybody's guess. It would be nice to have staff to be able to make all those grants move, and I look forward to some version of success in that. Even though our office doesn't issue grants, we realize how valuable it is, whether it's technical assistance or I think I've talked last year about WIFIA funding, which is a certain loan program. Related to the WIFIA program, one thing that's interesting that I've noticed over the years related to EPA funding is sometimes a particular group of money shrinks and then something else pops up. And it's basically a new initiative for that administration. WIFIA funding was one of those. I don't remember what actually went away, but what popped up was a major loan program for very significant projects, hundreds of millions of dollars, essentially. So it could be that happens again. Okay, in late April, EPA came out with some notices about addressing PFAS again. Came out in 2021 with the roadmap, various other additions to that strategy. I'm not sure you're going to hear anything groundbreaking here. They are looking at using Clean Water Act, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, RCRA, as well as the Toxic Resource Inventory. In the world of NPDES, we are going to continue to pursue the development of effluent limitation guidelines, and those are a specific set of treatment standards that relate to a certain manufacturing business. So they will, usually this takes about 5 years, and I think they were already 2 years into it. The idea is to look at what can manufacturers do technologically in order to be able to achieve a certain thing and then set the standard there. It's been done for various different standards. It's a good thing. There is some effort to try and improve the specific analytical methods involved and try and get at both drinking water as well as wastewater. And there seems to be something, and I apologize, I don't know about this, but some desire to get information collected about PFAS in air. Okay, I will end on what I will consider a success story. Success story has some history. Success comes with pain. Success comes with repeated efforts. Unfortunately, it comes in this world of tragedy called fire. The first effort was 2017 Santa Rosa Napa fire, and EPA was involved in the cleanup of that. There were probably lots of other fires that I can move on to, keeping them a little more closer to home. There was the Boulder Creek fire of 2020, going further away to Maui, 23, the LA fire of this past year. There are 2 phases that come with cleanup after such a disaster. The first phase is actually EPA's mission, and that's called the Hazardous Materials Cleanup. You probably heard about this. This is about going in to, remove propane tanks, various other explosives, that kind of stuff. I have this vision in my mind, and I apologize for not providing the picture, but maybe you've seen it. In this case, one of the unique substances was lithium-ion batteries coming from burnt cars. And so you have the jaws of steel, and then you have these huge tongs that go in and grab this thing, and it's probably as big as one of those tables. And you haul that out, and then you have to figure out how to wrap it and contain it and then get rid of it. So, you know, the success story is not only did we do our job, but we did it in something known as the fastest known time. Now, I don't know if you know about fastest known time. In my world, that's where you try and do some athletic feat in the fastest known time. It's kind of a weird concept, but we were told to do it in 30 days. We did it in 28. 1,500 EPA employees were involved. We have 15,000 nationwide. Like I said, it's unfortunate, but we're getting good at it. And we appreciate all the effort of the state partners to get that done. So we have now developed in our division a water emergency team. This has been around for a little while, but we actually hired a water emergency coordinator specifically related to such disasters, whether they're fires or other things. But you got to get drinking water systems back online. Hopefully the wastewater systems are either still online or still to be able to function, all that kind of stuff. If you've read or learned any stories about what's going on or had to go through in the Maui, it's very interesting. You know, basically the whole infrastructure was ruined. Then you have to go back and figure out what you can test, what you could use again. If you can't use it, you have to cap it and you replace it. Anyways, you can imagine the logistics. So Carl Banks is our water emergency team coordinator. And I bring him up just like I would bring up any other name, and that is EPA workers are still dedicated and ready to help at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your candor, and hopefully we'll have more uplifting times ahead. Now we'll hear from Phil Crater, the Deputy Director for the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Water Quality, where he manages the division's statewide planning, permitting, and policy development activities, and serves as liaison to the regional water boards, other agencies, as well as stakeholder groups. Phil previously worked at the Central Valley Water Board, starting back in 1998, and then moved to the State Water Resources Control Board in 2007. So, you come up, Phil.
I'm sorry. No, I'm so sorry. I got you, Lori.
You know how to make this full screen?
There you go.
Okay. It's good.
Thanks. Of course. Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? Nice to see you. This is my first time here. Some familiar faces, a lot of unfamiliar faces. Hopefully they will become familiar faces. I'm not good with names, but I do remember the faces and the conversations. So I'll do my best, but really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, and I'm using our 2025 strategic work plan kind of to guide through this. I think before I jump into that, though, I just want to acknowledge the presentations that we've had so far, and especially Peter and fellow US EPA employees. Just thank you for your service and your poise in these trying times. So what I'm going to do today is walk through some things that I think kind of touch what you're interested in here. Before I get into these project-specific activities, just at a high level, wanted to also touch on some of the priorities for the State Water Board. We've had an ongoing priority for a lot of public engagement, and we're trying to maintain that in light of the challenging budget times which impact our ability to travel. I was able to get here today, and I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to engage, so we'll continue to do our best to engage with the public. We're working hard on also trying to do more, or at least maintain the same level of service in light of federal budget challenges. We get a lot of money from the federal government. We're very appreciative of that, and it impacts us. We also have state budget challenges, and so we want to make sure that we're able to continue to provide service. In that area, we're putting a lot of effort into developing general permits. That's something we've been focusing on for a while, and we're just kind of investing more heavily in general permits, trying to maybe address 80 to 90% of the workload with those things so we can save our precious staff resources on individual activities for working on the really challenging things, which there's no shortage of. We're also working on climate resilience. We're working on water supply strategy. There's a lot of efforts on Bay Delta. I work quite a bit on fire response and recovery and preparedness, and we are also doing a lot of work on restoration. I know a lot of these things touch at least indirectly to what you're doing, and I'm happy to answer questions on any of those, but for today, again, I'm trying to use the time we have mostly to focus on the things that I think you're gonna care the most about. So our 2025 strategic work plan, there's a link here, which I don't know if this will get shared, but that'll take you to the live version of this thing. It's on the Water Board's website. It was adopted by the State Water Board. We do one of these each year. It is like a subversion of the board's overall strategic plan. It's a work plan for the year. We develop it with input from stakeholders and other public agencies, and it describes actions that we want to take to advance 4 really high-level priorities for the board, and I'm going to read these. I don't like reading, I apologize, but I need to read these. One of them is to protect public health by ensuring reliable access to safe, affordable drinking water and sanitation. One is to protect and restore watersheds, marine waters, and ecosystems. Another is to increase statewide water resiliency in the face of climate change and other threats by expanding and integrating California's water supply portfolio. And finally, to strengthen relationships, systems, and internal capacity to accomplish the Water Board's mission strategically, transparently, equitably, and efficiently. So what I'm going to cover today are select projects that I think affect wastewater. Some of these address more than wastewater. I'm not going to cover everything, so I am intentionally leaving things out, and I suggest you take a look at our work plan if you have an opportunity to get some broader context. So I'm going to jump into the projects now. First, we have a project on water and wastewater affordability. Each of these, I'm going to provide just a quick name on the project, the goal, and then division or office who's doing the work. This is intended so if you need to reach out and get additional information, you can. I didn't list individual staffs or emails because I can get a little overwhelming for us, but I'm happy to serve as your point of contact to funnel any of these questions to the right people. So you'll note some of these say project at the top. I don't know how to use the clicker, but I'm pointing. And some of them will, later you'll see they say high priority project. In our strategic work plan, the board indicates with a red asterisk those projects that we're really gonna be kind of making a big priority to get a lot done in this year. And so the ones that I say high priority project, those are the ones that we're really trying to get considerable work done now. So first we've got a project. This is to consider affordability in our board programs. And our goals here are to provide direct O&M support to assist community water systems that have appointed administrators and significant affordability concerns. So we want to make sure we're providing support in complying with our requirements. We are going to consider those criteria in amending our policies for the state revolving fund. This work is occurring out of our Division of Financial Assistance. They have a lot of outreach meetings and opportunities for input. Next is one that we're more involved in at the Division of Water Quality. We're working with the Division of Financial Assistance. This is our wastewater needs assessment, and we're trying to evaluate data on at-risk communities, looking at the condition of sanitation systems, and including technical, managerial, and financial factors. And our goal is to identify the communities that are most at risk without adequate sanitation systems, so we know where to help. We are currently in the midst, we've convened a panel for the wastewater needs. We have an advisory panel, and we're conducting public meetings, getting input. We've got board members that are very interested in following this, and it's receiving a lot of attention. I'm excited about the work. We've already talked about PFAS a little bit today. How do you guys like me to say that? Is it PFAS or PFOS?
PFOS is something different.
PFOS?
PFOS.
PFOA, okay. So PFAS investigations. So we're continuing investigations of industrial sources and public drinking water systems. Interesting to hear about air. I didn't know about that, but we're working on the water. And the goal for this is to develop a treatment-based MCL for PFAS. and we are going to continue a multi-year study monitoring drinking water systems, and right now really our focus is on getting that data into our systems so that we can evaluate it. We are working closely with our Division of Drinking Water and also our Division of Financial Assistance to make sure we get a good understanding of the information, and then we're ready to get some money out and provide support. We've also got an ongoing strategy to develop, or a strategy working on constituents of emerging concern. And the project is to develop a strategic plan because there are a number of these things that we're working on. And there are surely some efficiencies if we consider them together. We want to develop a plan to prioritize and manage CECs and to proactively ensure protection of drinking water, public health, and the environment. This is squarely in DWQ. It's been a project that we've been working on for a while, and we'll continue to work on it. Another one that I think a lot of people are paying attention to are the Water Board's integrated reports. The integrated report is our combination 303D, 305B report that we provide. We used to do this less frequently and less timely than we do now. We were subject of a lawsuit on timeliness of the reports, and the decision put us under court supervision, and although that's not a comfortable place to be, it's really been kind of a gift because it allowed us to get resources to put a unit together to focus on this. We've tried to work on developing guidelines for assessing data, and we've developed, I think, a more robust public engagement process around the reports as well. We have recently started getting our reports out on time for the first time in history. We're doing 3 regions every 2 years instead of 9 regions in one bite. And US EPA has supported this. Thank you, Peter. And so under that vein, we adopted the 2024 report. That's currently with US EPA. There was a letter from US EPA that came out on an overlist on some of the items that we had in the 2024 report that had to do with CSCI, or with stream condition assessments and biological indices. We are waiting to hear back from EPA on final action on that, and I don't know that we will anytime soon. For the 2026 and 2028 reports, we've taken the direction that was in that overlisting letter and plan to revise our approach for the upcoming reports. We are holding a hearing on the draft 2026 integrated report in the coming year. We want to compile, organize, and evaluate data and begin assessing, should say data, not date, excuse me for that, for the 2028 integrated report. And that is probably going to be the first integrated report that addresses PFAS. That is separate from but coordinated with our MCL project. So DWQ is again taking the lead on that. There's going to be a lot of discussion. I know there's a lot of interest in particular with the how we are going to handle listing biological data and our bioassessment data with regard to pollutants. Here's where I think you're all really focused today, and the next few slides, bear with me. I'm also figuring out how to communicate these projects. I'm newer in my job. I've been in the job for about a year in this role, and prior to the last year, I was very focused on wildfire and restoration and our dredge and fill program. So a lot of these other things, I'm still a bit on the steep end of the learning curve, but we're doing a lot of work on nutrients. My boss, Karen Mogus, our chief deputy director, was the deputy director in DWQ and was spearheading this before me. And so I'm in a learning curve on this, but we have a high-level, comprehensive project to develop a nutrient strategy to address nutrients. This high-level project is intended to develop a list of short and longer-term priorities, figure out who's going to work on them, what we want to focus on, and I think immediately what we can say is we're pretty sure we're going to integrate a focus on hazardous algal blooms up front, because there is a real present danger right now to people who are trying to recreate, to animals that are using the waters. And so that's an area where we see an immediate threat and an immediate need to respond. This is all still in the early stages. I know there's a lot of interest on how we're approaching nutrients, and we are also kind of slowing down. We're taking a bit of a deep breath and trying to figure out with the resources that we have and the issues that we're facing, rather than try and do all this at once, what's a more practical, metered approach to get into this and try and start working in earnest on some some of the things where we can do the most good. And so again, HABs, I think, is where we're probably going to start. You can see we've got a long list of regions and offices that are working on this, including Division of Water Rights for the flow piece, our Office of Information Management and Analysis, who's helping us with all of our data, and also taking the lead on the hazardous algal bloom piece, our Division of Drinking Water, and all our regional boards. Next on here, we have a more focused project on biostimulatory substances, cyanotoxins, and biological integrity. This is one of the ones I'm talking about that's got this high priority project. We're trying to make a lot of progress on this year. We want to develop a statewide biostimulatory substances, cyanotoxins, and biological integrity strategy that addresses nutrients and other biostim substances. We're currently taking a look at HABs, and we may emphasize our work in this project on cyanotoxins because of the linkage to HABs. This is all, again, under discussion. Don't think any decisions have been made, but please keep all this in mind when we're seeking input. And finally, the focused one here on hazardous algal blooms. The project here, it's another high priority one, is to implement strategies for hazardous algal blooms. This is mainly focused on event response and ambient monitoring. So we want to work to improve communication to tribes and to the public, unifying existing monitoring activities and focusing on high beach use holidays. I hope I hyphenated properly there. I think that's the way to do it. But, you know, Memorial Day, Labor Day, days when there's lots of folks in the water. We're focusing on standardizing data and making that data more timely and more accessible. We're focusing with the Office of Information Management and Analysis, the Division of Water Rights, and our Communications Office in that effort. Another high priority project in the realm of nutrients is our effort on ocean acidification and hypoxia. We're working on an ocean plan amendment, and we want to do that to address the effects of anthropogenic sources of nutrients in ocean waters off the Southern California Bight. So we're working on identifying a metric, evaluating modeling, and investigating wastewater treatment technologies. I know this is Southern California focused, but I think there's probably a pretty good nexus to what you're doing here, so I'm including it today. I'm thinking I maybe got we covered this one, didn't we? No? Okay. Infrastructure funding programs. Another high priority one. We want to amend the guidelines. Oh, yeah, we didn't do this one yet, sorry. Amend the guidelines for our Prop 4 programs that we administer at the State Water Board to make sure that we're getting money out efficiently into the right places. By the end of the year, we want to develop and amend those guidelines, and we want to implement priorities for state and federal funded programs, focusing on drinking water, including PFAS and other CECs, and lead service lines, focusing on wastewater and water recycling. And our Division of Financial Assistance is taking the lead on that effort. Next on here, developing new water supplies. We've got a water supply strategy. This is a very high priority for the board. It just seems to be one drought year after another and all the confounding effects, including fire. So we're looking at developing new water supplies from recycled water, from desalination, and stormwater capture. And we're really looking at our policies, looking at cost to compliance and regulatory burden, trying to thin out as much of the red tape as we can to get good projects coming to us and seeking approval so that we can issue permits, get funding out where appropriate, and really try and bring some of these new water supplies online. If you've got things in mind, particularly for water recycling, please reach out and consult early and often. We want to make sure we're being helpful. That's the list of slides. I made it through. Not a single joke. I apologize. I really feel like I'm slacking, but thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Phil, and a lot on nutrients, which you'll also hear about in terms of what we're doing in our industry moving forward from the permit in our next panel. So our next speaker, I'm not sure he really needs an introduction, is Bill Johnson, Chief of the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board, NPDES Wastewater and Enforcement Division. Having been with the board for nearly 25 years, and 20 of those years specifically with the MPDS wastewater program. You can bet that he's had his fingers on each and every one of your MPDS permits. So I'll give Bill the credit for that line. So
It's true.
I'm not that funny.
It's true. I didn't know that we were going to be like doing stand-up and jokes and stuff. I only know one joke, one wastewater treatment joke. So where do microbes go when they're confused? They go to the clarifier, that's right. And after this presentation, you may want to go to the clarifier too. Excellent. So I'm here to talk about the Regional Water Board's priorities, and so I set out to make a list of our priorities. And as I was thinking about the stuff with our priorities, I was like, there's a lot of overlap in my thinking. It got a little muddled, so I decided instead of a list, maybe I should be thinking about using a Venn diagram. But things got a little out of control, so I present to you Bill's blob chart, which I will walk you through one step at a time to try to give you an understanding of what's really going on at the Water Board and what's important to us. And I'm going to start in terms of our priorities by talking about our core functions, which isn't the type of thing we usually talk about in this setting that much because maybe it's kind of mundane, but it is what we spend most of our time doing. So by core functions, I'm talking about our standards and assessment work that our planning division does. In May, they'll be taking the triennial review of the basin plan to the board. Most of you are familiar with our permitting actions, so you work with us on those. You may not have seen a lot of them lately because of the US Supreme Court case with a little spat between San Francisco and EPA, so we're trying to figure out how to respond to that. But we got our plunger out, and we expect all those permits to get moved on out to the board for adoption in August. So we're moving on that. And of course, we work on issues related to compliance assurance. So sometimes you might run into us in terms of inspections and enforcement actions. So this is what we're spending all of our time on, or at least most of our time on it. So really, this is our priority. And so I just wanted to at least get it out there. But let's talk about the stuff that is maybe a little bit more high level and more interesting. And of course, the topic of the day is nutrients control. And it's actually not even just the topic of the day. I would say it's the topic of the decade because we've been talking about this for more than a decade, and it's very important and very timely. So obviously, it's really important to us, and it's happening at the same time, obviously, that there's climate change going on and the need to take climate action. And these things are related or not related, but they're going on at the same time. So in thinking about climate action, one of the things that's really important to us at the Water Board is thinking a little bit more deeply about contingency planning because with the changes in the climate, we're getting more of these atmospheric rivers, and when they come through, there's sometimes some inadvertent problems at the treatment plants that may or may not be avoidable, but they certainly need to have good contingency planning for when they happen. Also, of course, with climate change, there's the issue of shoreline adaptation to respond to sea level rise and groundwater rise. And this kind of also relates to getting back to the nutrients issue that we're talking about. So, we want to be looking for things that we can do that address all these things at the same time. So nature-based solutions is one of those things. We want to encourage projects that have multiple benefits because what we're doing to address nutrients and what we need to do to address climate change are going to be big, expensive projects, and we need to do them smartly. And the more we can take those resources in ways where we get benefits on more than one front, the better. And another case here, it's not just nature-based solutions. Another example is water recycling. We need to have more water available to us, and with water recycling, we can address some of the nutrients issues as well. Water recycling, nature-based solutions, all these solutions are going to take a lot of time. And of course, the regulatory world doesn't always assume that we have a lot of time to spend or doesn't give us the time. So one of the things we're doing at the Water Board right now is we're working on a compliance schedule policy that will hopefully give us a little bit of more time to breathe in and get smarter infrastructure projects done than just using sort of off-the-shelf gray infrastructure to address one topic at a time and potentially waste some money. this idea of trying to be smart about, all this infrastructure that's being thought about for climate change and nutrients sort of brings to mind the fact that these are not the only topics that we're concerned about. Get out the crystal ball, and we've already heard about PFAS today, right? There's a lot of people who come to me and say, Bill, when are you going to put PFAS limits in the NPDES permits? And, we could do that, but I'm going to try not to as long as I can, because I'm not sure there's an immediate benefit from that, because you have your hands full with nutrients and climate change right now. So, but PFAS is a real issue of concern, and it's coming down the pike, so we've got to figure out what to do with it. And one of my thoughts about, if we take some sort of a treatment approach to PFAS at the end of the pipe is, well, are we just going to move the PFAS from one medium to another, right? So PFAS is an issue related to, water recycling, and it's related to biosolids management, right? And end of pipe treatment is not necessarily the smartest way to go about dealing with an issue like any of the contaminants of emerging concern, like PFAS. This really calls on us to do pollution prevention and source control. So, pollution prevention is not just a little fluffy activity that we do to make everybody feel good. Look at us, look, we're gonna do, gonna throw away our plastic straws or whatever, This stuff is really important, because when we're successful at pollution prevention, we avoid much more expensive, complicated, costly infrastructure improvements. And we've had successes in pollution prevention in the past. Looking back to, to my early days at the water board, and before that, when the new copper limits came down, and that they were very stringent. So people engaged in copper pollution prevention, and it made compliance with those effluent limitations, more feasible. You've had a lot of success in mercury actions, reducing the amount of mercury that's coming into treatment plants because of the pollution prevention work. And I think that the source control, the source investigation and control activities that are being looked into now for PFAS are really important. We don't know if they're going to be successful or not. There's a lot we don't know, but it's worth investing in this, because the consequence of not investing in source control and pollution prevention for PFAS is that somebody's going to expect us to put numeric effluent limitations in your NPDES permits and then say, great, you've got 10 years to fix that problem too. Just build some more new treatment and solve that PFAS problem for us. And we all know that that's not really realistic. Another issue that is kind of related to pollution prevention is sanitary sewer overflows. We still care about SSOs. And I know that you're all still working on it. Is anybody here from South San Francisco today? Did they make it? Because I wanted to call them out for all their good work in South San Francisco, for sending out notices of violations to those scoundrels in the city who have leaky sewer laterals and cause sinkholes in front of their houses. This one, if you can't read the name, but this is my name on this one. I just got my sewer lateral fixed. Don't worry, I didn't need that $12,000. I'll just work a little longer. The notice of violation tells me I have 3 weeks to fix this problem, so I call them up and there's no way this is going to happen in 3 weeks. And we had a great conversation, and in that conversation, the guy on the phone was telling me about how this is really important, because sanitary sewer overflows are a really big deal, and if there's an overflow, there's this agency, the water board, that's going to fine them $10,000 a day or $10 a gallon. And I said, they sound like jerks to me. I did not tell them, but my sewer lateral is fixed now. So anyway, good job to South San Francisco and to the rest of you as well. All this stuff, I could just put it in a big bucket that talks about infrastructure upgrades, but that is such a big topic, it's hard to focus on it. But I think everything does kind of come down to the fact that a lot of our infrastructure is aging and needs to be upgraded and needs to be done in kind of a smart way. So I know that's a lot in the blob chart, so for those of you who really wish I just went with a list, here's your list. Core functions: nutrients control, climate action, shoreline adaptation, pollution prevention, and source control, and of course, just smart infrastructure upgrades. So, this is the first time I think I've ever been invited to talk to the BACWA annual meeting. And it may be my last time to talk here. So since I'm here, I wanted to thank you not just for having me here to do this presentation, but I actually just want to thank BACWA for being here in general, because I do want you to know that I've been doing the NPDES thing for 20 years. I've been at the Water Board for 25 years, and in all that time, it's been really terrific to have an organization like BACWA to work with. Especially in the last 10 years, we've had some really difficult conversations with dischargers. And it's been really great to have those difficult conversations with BACWA to help out with that. Because their conversations are difficult because the issues that we're dealing with are very important, and they're big issues. They have consequences. But they're not difficult conversations because of the people that we're working with. It's been extremely helpful. These conversations could have been much, much more difficult if we had to have them one discharger at a time and we weren't able to work with everybody at the same time to have good communication and good back and forth. And so while I have this microphone, I did want to say thank you to BACWA for all that you've done over the course of my career. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. And I know BACWA, really appreciates the collaboration of the Water Board and all of our regulators, and been working to develop those relationships so that we make smart, regulatory decisions. And I just also want to acknowledge, it's important that you acknowledge that the PFAS problem is really coming upstream. And I think we saw a couple days ago, EPA also acknowledged our role as passive receivers in their PFAS plan earlier this week. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend you go to the EPA website and take a look at that. So thank you for all of your, to all of our presenters for your insightful comments. We have a couple of questions. Lorian, how are we doing on time? Okay. All right, I'm going to choose my favorite question, which I know Phil touched on a little bit when you talked about wastewater needs assessment in your slides. We're living, and will be for each presenter, and can go in whatever order you want. We're living in an era of rising costs and increased economic instability. How do you factor in financial and affordability issues into decision making, whether that be specifically in permit decisions or rulemaking determinations or a policy consideration? Tell us what goes into that process a little bit. Who wants to start? Meredith, do you want to go ahead? Okay.
Okay. One thing about I'll start with our rulemaking. There is a specific cost analysis that we would do during any of our rulemakings for our board to consider. And I think given the times and the needs of wastewater treatment and projects to move, I think that would probably be factored in quite heavily in any rulemaking that we would do. This isn't the same as when we're talking with our refineries and there are huge profit margins that we're thinking about, right? These are about projects that we all need to happen. So that's where in rulemaking it would come in. When we're looking at our air permits, best achievable control technology does have an economic feasibility to it. I'll just note though, what I have heard from some of the BACWA members is that there is a big cost impact to the slow permitting process. And so to the extent that we can nail down that part, I feel like with what's within my control, that's the thing I'm most focused on, is giving you all relief from that drawn out process and that financial relief. So that's where my head's at.
Peter?
I'm not sure I have much more to add because our rulemaking also has a cost analysis when we do rules, and apparently we're going to. So I think our procedures are basically the same. When we issue permits specifically, like an NPDES permit, we don't have that part. We do take in consideration information from the applicant, whether we're writing EPA permits or coordinating with the Water Board or the State Board, so it's relevant.
How's that? Can you hear me? Hey, I'm back. So at the water boards, we have a few different touch points where we consider that. I guess following the format here in rulemaking, we have our own rule-making procedures that we've adopted, but depending on which pathway we use in rulemaking, we do consider costs there. But I think another thing that we do that is maybe a little less common, we have an initiative on cost of compliance that we consider, and this is something that we've been doing for well over a decade. I think we're pretty practiced at it. And the idea behind cost of compliance, like the elevator talk idea, is that if something that we require isn't bringing forth a meaningful outcome in terms of environmental outcomes or other like desirable outcomes for a project, if we're not using information, we shouldn't be asking for it. And when we go through our rules, either in draft form or if we're revising or amending something, we're looking for those types of things, and we're considering and leaning toward removing them to reduce costs. So that's something that we've been held accountable to do by our own board members, and by communicating it now, I think we're also held accountable to it by the folks that we regulate. And so really proud of the work and cost of compliance. We have definitely, as we tackle our workload of backlogged and pending permits, I think reduced and removed requirements from there. In terms of annual activities, we also have a fee-setting exercise. The water boards were required to recover the cost of our fees to administer the programs, and we do so by setting fees through emergency regulations. That's a public process. I think you're probably all well aware of that, but we have at several points throughout the year, we reach out, we conduct stakeholder workshops, we get comments, we go before our board with a proposed fee schedule, and we try and balance all these different issues that we're talking about to come up with something that's equitable. So there's the fee process, and lastly, we have our grants and loans work that we're doing, where we know that despite our best efforts to reduce costs, this stuff is still expensive. And there's, beyond the enrollment cost for the permit, there's the cost of administering and complying with the permits that you all have to bear. And so we have a grants and loans program through DFA, and we try and get money out, and we're trying to prioritize it to make sure that it's going to the areas where we'll get the most bang for the buck, and that means the greatest need. So those are a few areas that come to mind. I had a few written down on notes that don't seem to be in front of me, and if more come to mind, I'll be sure to let you know. Thanks.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, you guys, I think, covered all the really important issues here. So I think obviously when we do a regulatory action, we take into account cost to some extent too. I'll just kind of point out, as Peter had mentioned, that when you're doing NPDES permitting, it's under the Clean Water Act, and there's a part of it that's related to the water quality-based effluent limitations that's very idealistic, and it's just and cost is not explicitly spelled out in any way when we're actually trying to implement that stuff. But we still care about costs, and so how do we do that, right? So this is why, as I mentioned before, it's important for us to pursue multi-benefit projects, for instance, and to try to facilitate that, because we want to make sure that we meet our water quality goals, but we want to be able to facilitate doing it in a way that the money that gets spent on addressing a number of issues that benefit the community at the same time. So that's why that's critically important to us. And then one of the other things that isn't it's not very clear exactly how we're supposed to deal with it explicitly, but we're certainly aware of it and think about it, is that in California, our Constitution requires that fees for services be doled out to everyone the same, for the same level of service, regardless of what their income is. And so when people look at the Bay Area and think we're a very wealthy area, and so we can afford all these big projects, well, many people in the Bay Area can afford it. I'm grateful that I can afford to fix my sewer lateral. And, it's a 5-digit number, but I can do that, right? I can move money around in my accounts and figure that out. Not everybody can, right? And so, you can't just raise fees for everyone, because you're taking those people that are maybe more disadvantaged, less wealthy, and really impacting them a lot more or disproportionately. And so we're trying to balance, how do we manage the cost against the issues of who's paying for the cost, and are they going to experience the benefits of that? And there isn't really an explicit way to do that, but it's certainly on our mind.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you to all of our speakers here today for carving out the time to address our membership with these really helpful insights and information on your priorities. I think we've run out of time, correct? Yeah, so unfortunately we can't take additional questions, but a lot of our regulators will be sticking around the remainder of the day, probably because they heard there's a lot of food at BACWA events. But right now we are going to move to a break. There will be coffee, more coffee, and refreshments out in the foyer. I'm not sure we have a bell this year. You're used to us ringing a bell. We do have it to usher you back in, but we will start sharp 10:45 for the nutrient panel. So thank you again to our presenters.